An emotional Amin keeps talking during the break about his and our beloved Brian Windhorst, inaugural member of the Jonathan Zaslow Tool Hall of Fame. Amin is friends with Brian.
Though I've never heard him say it out loud.
I like Brian Windhorst, and I know him a little bit. I cannot call myself a friend of Brian Windhorst, but I have admired the work that he has done for a long time. And your defense of Brian Windhorst during the break, what were you getting mad about while you were staring at your phone?
No, it's just the number of people who seem to think that Brian went to high school with LeBron. Like he was out the school paper covering LeBron. And, like, no, Brian Windhorst is like my age. We're much older than LeBron. Brian Windhorst was out of college and a grown man working in newspapers when LeBron was first coming up as a phenom. As many local newspapers, I know people don't read newspapers anymore, but once upon a time, kids, newspapers had writers that were assigned beats. The beat was the thing that you covered. And some people covered the local NFL team, and some people covered the local hockey team. But the entry level in the sports department, Dan, was you were covered what? What would you cover as, not for you, but in general, a newspaper journalist?
I mean, you could cover high schools.
High
normally.
school. You cover high school. So Brian worked for the Akron Beacon Journal, I believe, and he was covering high school. I wonder who was playing high school sports who was really good in Akron at that time. Not really good for Akron. Not really good for Northeast Ohio. Not really good for Ohio. Good nationally. So, of course, he covers LeBron James, right? And then LeBron gets drafted. And so what does the Akron Beacon Journal do? Hey, the most impactful high school prospect ever, perhaps, is going to the local team. Hey, guess what beat you're on now, Brian Windhorst? The Cavs beat.
But what are you defending him against? Because our show can thank its economy to LeBron James.
Sure.
The entirety of our show, given what South Florida sports has been for 20 years and given what ESPN built for us specifically upon LeBron's arrival in Miami, what are you objecting to that people have been telling? Brian Windhorst is exceptional at his job, hard stop. Brian Windhorst is an incredibly hard worker, hard stop. And Brian Windhorst is also disliked because people simply think that he has been at the economy of LeBron since he was young, which he has been. It has been very profitable for a lot of people to be around the economy of LeBron.
Brian Windhorst exists in this weird space where half the people hate him because, oh, yeah, you hate LeBron. You're always hating on LeBron. And the other half of the people hate him like, you're always in the tank for your guy, LeBron. And when the populace hates you for two completely polar opposite reasons, you know what that means? Sounds like you're pretty fair. And the people who love LeBron are mad when he doesn't say LeBron glazy type stuff. And the people who hate LeBron hate when he's fair and he says good things about LeBron. Sounds like he's a fair guy. But what I am objecting to answer your question, there's three major points of ignorance that seem to get repeated a lot as I'm seeing all of this, right? Number one is that Brian went to high school with LeBron, that somehow and has been kind of just mooching off the cool kid that went to high school with me, right? Which isn't the case. He is a journalist, right? He's covered the dude for longer than anyone else, continuously, right? Number two is that Brian Windhorst wrote 4 books about LeBron. That's weird. Like he's a stalker or something. LeBron is one of the most public figures who draws a lot of attention and has lived a lot of lives, right, in the time he's been in public space. And so, yeah, there's a lot of material to be written about that. And the guy who has covered him longer than anyone else, of course, would be that, right? Number 3, and this one is the dumbest, perhaps, right, is that somehow this is Brian's fault. Like Brian walks around telling people that he's friends with LeBron. I said on Threads, I've never seen him, heard him insinuate even lightly, even gently. And the response is, well, yeah, he's always talking about he knows what LeBron's thinking. Ipso facto, that's presenting as friends. And I'm like, do y'all not know how journalism works?
Well,
are we at a point where people have a fundamental misunderstanding?
Yes.
Like
100%.
just, like the idea that oh, the guy who's covered this guy for damn near 25 years might know something that the rest of you don't. You think that means he's his friend or he's presenting as his friend?
Or a stalker.
Or a stalker.
Crazy.
Like, and it's like ignorance that is repeated. And it's not one person or two people. It's lots of people.
Well, but when you say ignorance is repeated, I've told you this before, and it's one of the most dismaying things, maybe the most dismaying thing about my professional feelings about journalism is that I care about what it is deeply and the minutia of it, and people do not. And furthermore, I can't think of maybe lawyers, used car salesmen. I can't think of an occupation that will get a more visceral reaction from somebody. I don't like that person than media. Like media creates a great, I underestimated how much people hate the media.
Dan, I don't want to turn this into the poor media, right? Defend the media or whatever. I'm just saying, like, it's one thing to say, I don't like you. I don't trust you. Your information is wrong. Like, okay, I'm with that. There are people, media people, that I don't like. I don't trust. Their information is wrong, or it removes context. It is manipulated, right? That happens, yeah. What I'm having a problem with is people who are like, why is this dude writing books? Like, what? Do you not understand how any of this works? Like, if he's not his friend, why did he write 4 books about him? Like, it's just it's a fundamental misunderstanding of like how things work. It's not even like I don't like you or I don't trust the media. It's like, why are you writing books?
But isn't that happening all the times in arguments where there's the confirmation bias on you want to just reaffirm your feelings that
that's the next level confirmation bias.
I think the thing too that's weird is that like LeBron like put voice to it. Like it's different when other media people or people on the internet are like, oh, Brian Windhorst is so weird. He's always following LeBron. For LeBron to voice that in an interview, that's the part to me that was like, man, LeBron, you know Brian, you know what the deal is. Like he's been building your lore since you were 17 years old. And all of a sudden now you're going to switch up and be like, oh, no, he's weird. He's trying to act like he's my best friend. I'm a big fan of Brian Windhorst. I used to produce his podcast. Very nice guy.
Well, thank you.
Friend of mine, actually.
That was good journalistic disclosure from Tony.
Yes.
He has a personal... Thank you, Tony.
I have a personal relationship
well
with Brian.
Done.
Thank you.
Why don't you think you're friends with Brian Windhorst, Dan?
I just don't know him well enough to. I would say we're very friendly, but friends. Like you have to. If you have someone who you consider a friend, isn't that a person you've gone to dinner or lunch or coffee with once, like, or that you've done something socially with them outside of work? Isn't that generally where it is that you guys would put friendship? Or it's just most of my friends are work friends, so maybe that's
your
not.
Trainer.
Yes, that's correct.
Well,
as
it's different times, right? Like you can have friends with people you've never actually met with in person, like internet, texting relationships. I will say
video
this.
games.
Sure, I don't know if Dan's doing a lot of video.
No, I'm
games,
saying other
but-
people are friends with people for a long time playing video games.
I got Dan do a COD
Yeah,
every night.
I will say this. I think
I'm in.
I think if there was like a dinner threesome of Tony, Brian Windhorst, and Dan, Dan and Brian Windhorst obviously would have a better time with each other, and Brian would gravitate more towards Dan. Like he'd consider Dan more of a peer and friend. No disrespect to you, but I think that he would spend more of his time talking to Dan than you.
But we're there together, all three of us would be
I know.
back and forth. I mean, you need a life of the party.
Tony's great at doing the jump rope. You jump in and jump out. He's great at that. So I could see Tony holding his own in the 3-man.
Oh my God, we would have great conversations.
Yeah.